Before this video starts, I do want to quickly address something. As you guys probably know if you've been on this channel for a while, I used to have Sports TNB as a sponsor of this channel. His ad would play before every video, his link would be in the description, and that is no longer the case. As you can see, it's not in the intro of this video, it wasn't in the last one. Of course, I saw the accusations of him being a scammer. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. However, because the sponsorship was so easy, I very selfishly turned a blind eye just because it was easy. Getting sponsors is not an easy thing to do with a channel at my size, so when I saw a very easy one at my disposal, I took it and didn't ask too many questions when that was clearly the wrong move. So he's no longer going to be on this channel. I'm going to work to remove the ads on the old videos. That's a pain in the ass with YouTube's editing system with videos that are already uploaded, but I'm going to do the work for it. And down the line, I'm going to put more research into what sponsors I put in my video. I'm sorry that he was there to begin with, but that's that. If you're new to this channel, I'm sorry that this is the intro you got, but moving on. Today we are going back to the Dumb Criticism series that took a long hiatus, and by that I mean it's been 3 weeks, which by quarantine time in 2020 equals 8 months, but also 3 days. I don't know, this year is fucking with me. But today we are talking about Kobe Bryant and the many dumb criticisms of Kobe Bryant. Now the reason I didn't do this video very early into the series, specifically on Kobe, was because I didn't feel there was that big of a variety of criticisms of Kobe as a player that didn't have at least some validity. With this series, I titled it Dumb Criticisms for a very specific reason. I wanted the criticisms I talk about to be just blatantly stupid. But there are 2 criticisms of Kobe that I feel within the context of some discussion are very stupid, one of which I talked about a while ago, which is the one in the thumbnail, and the other is the notion that Kobe was inefficient. Now, both of those discussions used in moderation in the context of all-time discussions can have some validity, but they both can be taken to some extremes. So let's talk about some criticisms of Kobe that are not inherently dumb, but end up being dumb in how they can be used. Now, first off, I would like to address the Kobe is inefficient criticism because it's the easiest one to get over with. See, in the context of all-time discussions, yes, Kobe Bryant is inefficient in comparison to many all-time greats. Here is my personal top 10 players of all time, and yes, Wilt isn't on this list. Calm your tits. I have him at 11, and he could very easily make the top 10 depending on my mood. I just feel his playstyle at his statistical peak wasn't conducive to winning, so that's why he isn't in my top 10. But that's irrelevant. When you look at my top 10, I'd say it's a pretty typical top 10 list. It's common to see these players ranked where I have them, and Kobe has the second lowest career field goal percentage of all 10 of these players and the second lowest peak field goal percentage. So when we're talking about Kobe in the discussion of whether or not he is a top 10 player, and you want to say that, hey, all these other guys are considerably more efficient than Kobe, or at least a decent bit more efficient, that is valid. However, if we're talking in the context of basketball in general, no, Kobe Bryant was not inefficient. He was inefficient in comparison to all-time greats, but in comparison to the rest of the league, he was doing just fine. In Kobe's prime, he had a slightly above league average field goal percentage. Now, most all-time greats do better than league average, so it's a fair criticism in an all-time great discussion. But the blanket statement of Kobe was inefficient is just incorrect. It's a statistical falsehood. It's not even an opinion, it's just false. It's just not true. But now let's talk about the next criticism, and that is the notion that Kobe was carried by Shaq. This one bothers me for a variety of reasons, but really the number one reason has to be the word carried. The word carried really bothers me because it implies that Kobe did not deserve the championship rings that he got. It implies that he did not earn those championships in any capacity, when that is quite the contrary. Kobe Bryant was a superstar top 10 player in the league for 2 out of those 3 championships. It's why that duo was so fucking ridiculous. And even for the first championship, when Kobe was not quite at a superstar top 10 player level, he still made very good contributions to that championship. While he did not play well in the finals, which we'll talk about in a bit, he did play well in the playoffs as a whole. In the first round of the 2000 playoffs, the Lakers had the Kings in the first round, and they took care of them pretty swiftly because Shaq was dominant with averages of 29 17, but Kobe also averaged 28 on 50% shooting. Second round, Kobe averages 21 points per game, and in the Western Conference Finals, Kobe averages 25 and 6 versus the Portland Trail Blazers. In fact, in Game 7 versus the Blazers, in the game where Kobe famously threw the lob to Shaq to close out the series, Kobe had nearly a triple-double with 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 7 assists, as well as 4 blocks, shooting 48% from the field, with 9 of those points coming in the fourth quarter in a game where Shaq struggled. Shaq in this game only had 18 points and only took 9 shots in 47 minutes of action. So it was Kobe that allowed the Lakers to even go to the 2000 finals in the first place. Otherwise, it would have been the Portland Trail Blazers. If Kobe had a below average game or even really an average game in that game, they probably lose. Now, as I said earlier, Kobe did not play amazing in that final series. However, that was not his fault. Jalen Rose literally admitted to intentionally injuring Kobe, and that affected how he played, but he still played a shit ton of minutes. Some would say Mamba mentality. For the series, he averaged 15.5 points on 37% shooting, which obviously is not good, but he was hurt. Also, I don't know why people don't give Jalen Rose shit for being a dirty player, despite him really giving away the fact that he did that. But despite struggling scoring-wise in that series, Kobe played good defense on Reggie Miller, but more important was his contributions in Game 4 of the finals. See, Shaq had a great game in that series, but by the middle to end of fourth quarter, he had fouled out, and he did so with the Lakers down by a couple points. If they lose this game, Indiana ties the series up at 2-2 heading into Indiana for Game 5. But Kobe took over the game, and despite being hurt, he for the game had 28, 4, and 5 on 52% shooting, and he came up in the clutch with Shaq off of the floor, hitting 3 shots late in the fourth that sealed the game, allowing the Lakers to take a 3-1 lead, which, as we know, unless you are the 2016 Warriors, is a guaranteed win in the finals. So Kobe changed the direction of that series, even if his overall numbers were not great, but the whole reason his overall numbers were not great was because he was hurt. Then in the 2001 and 2002 finals, he played like a superstar talent. In the 2001 finals, he averaged 29 points per game to Shaq's 30, while also averaging 7 rebounds and 6 assists. Wow, that is a hell of a carry job there. Kobe was practically dead weight. In the Western Conference Finals, Kobe had a better series than Shaq. Now, this wasn't a sweep, so I don't think it really would have been all that consequential, but he averaged 33, 7, and 7 on over 50% shooting, including a 45-point game on 54% shooting in Game 1. In the finals, Kobe averaged 25, 8, and 6. Now, Shaq averaged 33 and 16, but there was not much that Kobe could do about that. Shaq was just very good. And that was pretty much what happened in the following year. Kobe had a good regular season, a good playoffs, had a few standout performances in the playoffs, had a good final series, but that just could not outdo what Shaq did. You've heard this argument before, and it's one that I subscribe to quite a bit, and that is the argument that you could have put a young Michael Jordan on those Lakers teams in place of Kobe, and Michael would not have won Finals MVP next to Shaq at his absolute peak, with him also having a lot of favorable matchups in those playoffs. Like, winning Finals MVP with peak Shaq on your team with him having a lot of great matchups would have been more impressive of an individual feat than anything that really any top 10 player of all time has accomplished, because Shaq was just that good in this stretch of time. There wasn't a play that was better than give Shaq the ball and get out of the way. No player had a play all time that was better than that with Shaq where he was at this point. So to say that Kobe was carried by Shaq is fucking ridiculous. It's ridiculous to say that anyone who averaged 30 points per game in the playoffs was carried. Steve Kerr was carried by the Bulls and the Spurs in the 90s. He was an okay backup shooting point guard, and he averaged like 4 points per game. That was it. That was okay. That's what carried is. To say that Kobe was carried in the playoffs would be similar to saying that Steph Curry was carried in his last 2 finals because he didn't win Finals MVP, despite him having phenomenal performances in both of those final series. Not that that stops people from saying that as well, because people are fucking dumb, as you can tell. But on the flip side of this, back in the sit-down conversation that Kobe and Shaq had a while back, Kobe mentioned that he hated the narrative that he was carried because he felt it was is hypocritical because people didn't say, oh well, Magic had Kareem, or oh well, Michael Jordan had Scottie Pippen. But the thing about that is, I don't agree with that comparison, because with Magic and Jordan, they were very clearly the best players. Now actually, on the flip side of that, what I don't understand is why people don't hold Kareem having Magic over him more. They consistently put Kareem over Magic despite most of Kareem's championships, actually all but one of them, coming on the Lakers where he was the second best player and Magic won 5 as the first best player, but whatever. Magic won 3 finals MVPs to Kareem's 1 while they were on the Lakers, and yet people say that Kareem is better than him all time and don't hold that against Kareem. I don't know. But anyways, the problem with comparing Kobe having Shaq to Jordan having Pippen is that Shaq was considerably better than Scottie Pippen. Like, there's a gigantic gap there. But more importantly than that, it would be more fair to say that Shaq had Kobe than to say that Kobe had Shaq, because that's just the dynamic they had. Shaq was just clearly the best player. Because Kobe is now considered an all-time higher talent than Kobe, his name gets mentioned first, but at the time it was Shaq and Kobe, not Kobe and Shaq, and that's an important distinction. See, in that comparison of even MJ couldn't have won Finals MVP next to Shaq, that can also be turned around on its head to where it's also very likely a guy like Vince Carter or Tracy McGrady could have done similar things to Kobe in his position because of just how Shaq was. That doesn't mean that Kobe was carried, that doesn't mean his championships that he won with Shaq have no value, it just means they don't have as much value as they would have if he won those as the #1 guy, and they don't have as much value as his championships that he won in 2009 and 2010. But all of this is to say that the Kobe had Shaq and Kobe is inefficient arguments in themselves are invalid, but they aren't in the context of debating all-time talent and all-time rankings. You can hold Shaq above Kobe's head when comparing him to MJ, but if you think Kobe having Shaq made him not a top 15 player of all time, you're a fool. Like, there's nuance to this. It doesn't have to go to that extreme. Same goes for the efficiency knock. It is fair to hold it against Kobe that his field goal percentage was around league average while a lot of all-time greats were doing better than that, but to say that Kobe was inefficient is not true when you're talking about in comparison to the rest of the league. But those are the many dumb criticisms of Kobe Bryant. That is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music. Oh, and also, he would have been way more efficient if he had spacing. That's also just a part of his era, so keep that in mind.